He is a king, just shy of 21. She is the enchanting niece of a cardinal, and she is 19. The protagonists of this little gallant drama set in the mid-17th century could hardly have known that their passionate love would be remembered for centuries to come. Young Louis XIV and the Italian beauty Maria Mancini adored each other, but the chasm of their social standings created an insurmountable barrier between them. Maria's eyes were often likened to amethysts, dark and striking. She was undeniably beautiful, without a doubt. But who could have guessed that the daughter of Baron Michel Mancini and the sister of Cardinal Mazarin would become the first love of the King of France? Born in Rome, she arrived in France much later. The first minister too and of Austria gradually brought his nieces out of Italy, and these dark-eyed Mazarinettes, there were 7 of them in total, were not well received by the Parisian aristocracy. Why? It was quite simple. The haughty descendants of Vendôme, Condé, Guise, and Richelieu suspected that this group of newcomers had arrived for a reason. They would grow up, gain confidence and power, and eventually dictate who was in charge. Their awkward manners and poor pronunciation were openly mocked, and their gangly figures sometimes appeared ridiculous. Yet, the girls, indeed, were growing and changing. Some of them blossomed into true beauties. No one dared to scoff at Maria Mancini or the other Italian girls any longer. Furthermore, the worst fears of the French aristocrats began to materialize. The cardinal started marrying off his relatives into the finest families of the kingdom. Laura Mancini wed Louis de Vendôme. Olympia married the Count of Savoy. Hortensia was given to the Duc de la Meillera. Laura Martinazzi was placed into the family of the Duke of Modena. Maria Anna was betrothed to the Duc de Bouillon, and Anna Maria to Prince de Conti. For girls of modest backgrounds, these were phenomenal matches. But Maria was luckier than the rest. She caught the eye of none other than Louis XIV himself. Young, handsome, charming, and ready to marry. Even the story of how their feelings developed seems incredibly sentimental. One day, the king fell seriously ill, and Maria, already deeply in love with him, wept uncontrollably. Her tears moved the king so profoundly that he began to recover. The tears of the beauty proved more effective than the remedies of the royal physicians, noted Bussy Rabutin. The romance unfolded rapidly, and the lovers were allowed to meet. It's hard to say why. Perhaps it was a lapse on the part of the Queen Mother, who didn't believe in the strength of her son's feelings. Maybe the cardinal held a faint hope that Louis would elevate his niece. But by the time the court realized what was happening, Maria and the king were consumed by an unprecedented passion. The first to take action was Mazarin himself. A marriage that would benefit his family clashed with state interests. The most advantageous move would be to marry the king to a Spanish infanta, especially since Madrid expressed interest in such a union. And of Austria also had no objections. The infanta was her own niece, and the Habsburgs, as is well known, fully supported marriages within the family. This meant that Maria needed to disappear. Louis tried to argue against his mother and the minister, but his reasons quickly ran dry. As king, he had to act according to political interests, not the dictates of his heart. He was allowed to say goodbye to Maria, who was being sent to La Rochelle, and their final meeting was a heart-wrenching affair. Unable to hold back his tears, the king hid his face. Maria, shaken by the intensity of his emotions, exclaimed, "You're crying, sir." And so, they parted ways. Not long after, the Spanish alliance was sealed. Louis married the infanta. In Maria's eyes, which had captivated many of her contemporaries, the bright spark dimmed. A few years later, in Rome, she married Prince Lorenzo Colonna and bore him 3 sons. The union turned out to be unhappy. The couple quarreled, accused each other of infidelity, and eventually separated. Together with her sister, Maria traveled across Europe until she finally returned to Italy 17 years later. Maria Mancini passed away in the same year as Louis. She died in May, he in September. However, many years later, she did connect with the ruling French house, though not the Bourbons. Her great-great-grandson, Camillo Borghese, married Napoleon Bonaparte's sister.